Chapter 70, the Jubilee, Part 4. Leviticus 25, 35 to 38. And if thy brother be waxen poor and fallen in decay with thee, then thou shalt relieve him, yea, though he be a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with thee. Take no usury of him, or increase, but fear thy God, that thy brother may live with thee. Thou shalt not give him thy money upon usury, nor lend him thy victuals for increase. I am the Lord your God, which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, to give you the land of Canaan, and to be your God. Leviticus 25, 35 to 38. This is not a popular text with the modern evangelical church. It smacks too much of the social gospel. One reason for the rise of the social gospel in the 19th century was the development of pietism, with its unconcern for worldly matters like charity. Among many Catholics and Protestants, devotional exercises were supplanting the Christian concern for the needy. The modernists, with their social gospel, did not meet this need. Their solution to it has been statism, that is, state charity or welfarism as the substitute for Christian action. Thus, both evangelicals and modernists contributed very substantially to the rise of the modern state. The evangelicals steadily retreated from Christian action in the areas of health, education, and welfare, and the state moved in. Social financing must be provided, if not by Christians, then by the state. For the modernists, the state was and is the answer to problems. For differing reasons, both evangelicals and modernists have surrendered most of the world to the state. They should not be surprised or angry at the results. They share in some of the guilt for it. At the same time, in some cultures where Christianity is new, many groups have readily accepted the responsibility for their fellow Christians and for others. Knight reports that in the islands of the South Pacific, members of a family help one another finance the overseas university education of a student and assist one who is in trouble of any kind. We have thus a duty to help those fallen in decay, that is, weak in the hands, unable to help themselves because of some adversity. The goal is that thy brother may live with thee. Bush noted, life in the Scriptures is often used in opposition to sickness, distress, calamity, as Isaiah 38:9. The writing of Hezekiah, king of Judah, when he had been sick and was recovered, Hebrews, was made alive of his sickness. Nehemiah 4:2. Will they revive, Hebrew, make alive, the stones out of the heaps of the rubbish which are burned? 1 Chronicles 11:8. And Joab repaired, Hebrew, made alive, the rest of the city. Genesis 45:27. And the spirit of Jacob their father revived, Hebrew, was made alive. The Bible associates life with health, freedom, and salvation. A number of versions give a different reading of verse 35 than does the Authorized Version. If your brother, being in straits, comes under your authority, and you hold him as though a resident alien, so that he remains under you, do not exact from him advance or accrued interest, for fear your God. Let him stay under you as your brother. If your brother becomes poor and cannot support himself, you must maintain him as if he were a resident alien or settler, and let him live with you. In this form, we see that brotherly love is to be extended to resident aliens as potential brothers. In verse 36, interest is forbidden on all charitable loans. It is noteworthy that the word interest in Hebrew is usually neshek, from the root to bite. The law in Deuteronomy 23:19 and 20 reads, Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury. Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all that thou settest thine hand to in the land whither thou goest to possess it. The alternate reading of Leviticus 25:35 suggests that in cases of need among resident aliens, that is, non-covenant peoples, the same rule should apply as to covenant members. This law is not concerned with business loans. The alien was not governed by the Jubilee release, but the law of charity is broader. Calvin's comments on usury in connection with the law of Exodus 22:25 are of interest here. He concludes, usury is not now unlawful except in so far as it contravenes equity and brotherly union. Interest, or usury, translates, as we have noted, a word meaning bite. Other Hebrew words translated as usury include nasha, to exact, mashasha, an exaction, and, in the New Testament, tokos, offspring. In any case, the laws of this section, as others, are intended to give us the practical rules for applying the law of Leviticus 19:18. Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbour as thyself. I am the Lord. It is immoral to affirm this law, the law of our neighbour, while denying all the laws whereby God requires us to manifest our love. Making money off the poor is strictly forbidden. The various federal programs for relief to the poor provide more money to the bureaucracy than to the poor. Snaith's analysis of the words used with respect to interest or increase in verse 36 and increase and profit in verse 37 is very important, despite the modernist reference to later legislation. Interest, increase. These are two types of interest. The first, nesek, means interest paid regularly, and in the end the original loan is repaid in one payment. The second, tarbit, involves no interim payment of interest, but an increased sum being repaid in the end. Exodus 22:25, Hebrews 24, Deuteronomy 23:19 following, deal only with the first type. Probably this later legislation is to block a loophole which the moneylenders had discovered. Profit. The Hebrew is marbit, and the meaning is the same as that of tarbit in the previous verses. Marbit, profit or increase, can also mean nourishment. We are not to be fed on our neighbour's poverty. This ministry to the poor was at once assumed by the New Testament church because they saw themselves as the true Israel of God, continuing the life and work of the old Israel. The diaconate was established to make this ministry more effective. Acts 6:1-4. It should be noted that one writer, who has a modern view of the law as obsolete, still adds, can believers today do less than what was commanded then? Christ does not open the door to a lesser obedience, but to more faithfulness and more power in our obedience. This requirement of non-profit help to the poor is referred to in various places, most notably perhaps Ezekiel 18:17. Rabbi Hertz commented on this law. This is in strongest contrast to the treatment of the impoverished debtor in ancient Rome. The creditor could imprison him in his own private dungeon, chain him to a block, sell him into slavery, or even put him to death. If the debtor had several creditors, the Roman law of the 12 tables ordained that they could hew him in pieces, and although one of them took a part of his body larger in proportion to his claim, the other creditors had no redress. Many subterfuges have been invented to evade the force of this law. In one way or another, God's law is declared null and void because we are now on a higher spiritual plane and need not personally concern ourselves with the poor. One of the strangest excuses comes from Morenz and Alleman. The law of Leviticus 25:35-38, could be applied only in a society in which blood was a guarantee of character, which means that it was a religious ideal. Two things stand out in this strange sentence. First, there is an assertion that in Israel, blood was a guarantee of character. Everything in the Old Testament is against such an idea. The test of character is obedience to the Lord, not blood. For that matter, Israel and its people were not united by blood, but by God's covenant. In Abraham's household, we see 318 fighting men, Genesis 14:14, which means that there were perhaps as many aged non-fighting men and as many children, about 1,000. Another 1,000 women were also of the house of Abraham. Out of 2,000 thus, only one young man of Abraham's line remained in the covenant line, Isaac. Israel left Egypt a mixed multitude, Exodus 12:38, so that more foreign blood was added. The foreign admixtures were continual, so that the unity of blood is nonsense. Second, this law is denied status as a law because it is supposedly a religious ideal. Is a religious ideal something to be revered but not obeyed? If something is a religious ideal, it should be all the more mandatory. To believe that vague affirmations can replace law and bring in a brave new world is nonsense, even if it be very popular nonsense and also ecclesiastically respectable.